Have you ever watched a duck on the water before? It glides effortlessly and they're just drifting across the surface like it doesn't have a care at all. But if you go underneath it, if you look below the waterline, what you're gonna see is that those little feet, they are thrashing. They're paddling like mad. They're working, fighting, straining just to hold itself above the water. And what you see is that they look fine on the top, on the surface, but they're struggling underneath. And I want to tell you something today that might change how you see every person that you walk past this week. Because the truth is that we are surrounded by ducks. The coworker who has it all together, the friend who seems completely fine. It could even be the person in the mirror in some mornings. You're calm on the surface, but you're paddling for your life underneath. And you just can't see it. Because the truth is this. Everyone is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. The girl who looked bored in class may have cried herself to sleep last night. Or the guy who won't stop smiling might be the one who's hurting the most. It could be the cashier, the stranger, the friend who says, "I'm fine," but they say it a little too fast. And we move through a world of people that we only see on the surface. We see the glide, but we never see the feet paddling underneath. And I think if we really understood that, if we really let it sink in, that it would change how we treat everyone. Because honestly, here's the problem. We're the most connected generation in history, but at the same time, we're also the most loneliest. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that we have perfected the art of looking fine. We have entire platforms that are built for just showing the surface, for showing the highlights, showing the glide, because nobody posts the thrashing that's happening under the water. You don't see any captions of a photo that says like, "Oh, I felt worthless today and I don't know why." We curate the surface and we hide the struggle, and then we look at everyone else's surface and we conclude that we are the only ones who are paddling. We are the only ones who are struggling. So everyone's drowning quietly next to each other, but we're all convinced that we're the only ones. And honestly, here's what makes it worse. We've made "I'm fine" the socially required answer. Someone asks how you're doing, and then there's an unspoken contract that's like, say fine, keep moving, and don't make it weird. We ask the question, but we don't actually want the real answer. And everyone knows it, so like nobody gives it. "I'm fine" has become the most common lie that we tell, and the one we're most relieved when people believe. And so we pass each other every day, in the hallway, the checkout line, the comment section, just surfaces gliding past surfaces. But underneath every one of them is a world that we know nothing about, because you never really know what someone else is carrying. You don't know that the person who snapped at you yesterday just buried their dad last month. You don't know that the friend who canceled on you again can barely even get out of bed. You don't know that the strong one, the one who seems to hold everyone else all together, they haven't had a single person ask them how they're doing in the past month. Like, we judge the surface because that's all that we can see. And then we forget almost every single time that there's an entire ocean underneath. So let me tell you why this matters more than most people realize, because I don't think most people understand what the human beings around them are actually going through. Newsflash, the world is not very gentle to people. Some people grew up hearing far more criticism than encouragement. They learned before they could even name it that they were a disappointment. And they've been carrying that voice around ever since. And now they're in a body that's an adult, but they have a heart that flinches like a child. And some people have been lied to, cheated on, abandoned by people that they never thought would abandon them, who promised that they would never leave. People have been bullied in ways that have completely rewired how they see themselves, and they've been betrayed by people that they would have died for. And some people are just exhausted from surviving things that they will never say out loud, things they've never told anyone, things that they carry into every single room, invisible, heavy, and silent. And here's the thing that stops me almost every time. We have no idea which of these is true for the person right in front of us. That difficult person, they might be difficult because difficult is all anyone ever was with them. And that cold person, they might have learned that warmth isn't safe. That person who can't seem to trust you, someone might have taught them that trust gets you hurt. What looks like someone's personality is often just their scar tissue. We meet people in the middle of a story that we never got to read the beginning of. And once you see that, something shifts. You stop asking what's wrong with that person, and you start asking what happened to that person. Those are completely different questions. One of them judges the surface, and the other has compassion for the ocean underneath. Nobody is just difficult for no reason. Everybody's paddling is about something. And the fact that you can't see it does not mean that it isn't there. So another question becomes, what do we do with a world full of people who are silently struggling? And here's the answer. And honestly, it's so simple that it's almost embarrassing, but it's so hard because nobody does it. You show compassion. You be kind. Now, I have to be careful because I think that word has been cheapened. When I say like compassion or kindness, I don't mean nice. Nice is very surface level and performative. Nice is the guy who's polite to your face and then cruel behind your back. I'm talking about the real thing. I'm talking about the kind of compassion and kindness that isn't performing for anyone, the kind that's uplifting, the one that's encouraging, that makes room for people, the one that actually listens, and instead of just waiting for their turn to talk. Be so kind to people that you make them forget, for even just for a moment, how cruel the world has been to them, because you never know. You might be the first person all week to treat them like they matter. And here's what I've noticed about the genuinely kind and compassionate people. They almost always know what suffering feels like. They've been under the water themselves. They've paddled and struggled. They understand. Because that's what suffering can do if you let it. We talked last time about how pain can either make you bitter or better. And this is exactly what better looks like in practice. It's the person who was overlooked now becomes a person who notices people. It could be the person who cried alone now becomes the one who sits with others. They become for someone else the exact person they needed and never had. The kindest people are usually the people who know what it feels like to be treated unkindly. It's often the ones who have suffered the most. They become for others the person they once desperately needed for themselves. That's redemption. That is your wound turned into a gift. It's taking the worst thing that happened to you and turning it into the reason someone else survives. Here's one more thing about this kind of kindness and compassion. It's not earned. It's not a reward for good behavior. You don't wait until people deserve it. Because the truth is, the whole point is that hurting people rarely look like they deserve it. Hurting people are actually often the hardest ones to love. So you don't give kindness because people earned it. You give it because they need it. This is where I want to show you the person who did this better than anyone else who's ever lived. And that was Jesus. Because Jesus didn't just teach this, he was this. Look at where he spent his time. He noticed people that everyone else walked past and just looked past. There's a moment in Luke chapter 8 where a huge crowd is pressing on him. Everyone's grabbing and shouting. And there's one woman who had been bleeding for 12 years of being considered ceremonially unclean, who had been untouchable, isolated, and invisible. And she reaches out to touch the edge of his robe, and he doesn't want to bother him. She just wants 1 second of contact. And once that happens, once she touches the edge of his robe, Jesus stops. In the middle of a mob, he stops and says, "Who touched me?" And now the disciples think he's crazy. They're like, everyone's touching you. But he felt her. Out of the whole crowd, he noticed the one person who was paddling underneath, the one everyone else had written off. And he turned the entire moment toward her so that she, who had been invisible for 12 years, would finally be seen. That's the whole thing. That's what I'm talking about. Jesus was never too busy for the person everyone else overlooked. In a crowd full of important people, he always seemed to find the one who was invisible. Look at who else he went to. The woman at the well, hiding from her whole town. He sat with her. The lepers that nobody would touch, he touched them, which was a thing that they needed even more than the healing because they hadn't felt human contact in years. The tax collector everyone hated. The children the disciples tried to shoo away. The thief dying next to him on the cross. Over and over, Jesus moved toward the exact people that the world moved away from. And here's why he could. Isaiah calls him a man of sorrows, acquainted with deepest grief. He wasn't kind from a distance, from a place of comfort looking down. He knew. He was rejected, betrayed, abandoned by his closest friends, mocked, misunderstood, and eventually crucified. He paddled under the water. He understood pain. He understood suffering. So when scripture says in Ephesians, be so kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you. Like that last part is the whole engine, as God forgave you. You be kind the way you were shown kindness first. Now, because people earned it, you didn't earn it either. It was given to you when you least deserved it, so now you can give it forward. Jesus didn't wait for people to become lovable before he loved them. He loved them first, and that love is what made them new. That's the order. Love comes first, and then the healing follows. And sometimes the smallest thing heals a wound that's been bleeding for years. You have no idea how much power there is in making one person feel like they matter. To you, it's just a 2-minute conversation. But to them, it might be the first time in months anyone looked past the surface and saw what's really going on underneath. So how do we do this practically? First, we need to assume the ocean. We need to change our default. We need to walk into every interaction assuming the person in front of us, they're carrying a heavy weight that we can't see. Because statistically, they are. That rude driver, the short-tempered coworker, the friend who's been distant, we need to assume that all of them are paddling. And it's going to turn your judgment into compassion faster than anything else will. And then second, we need to ask the question and actually wait. When you ask someone how they're doing, ask like you mean it. And then, this is kind of the hard part, stay silent long enough for the real answer. Because most people will just be like, I'm fine. because they can feel that you're already moving on. But if you hold the moment, if you look them in the eye and you ask a second time, no, how are you really? You'd be stunned how often the surface there cracks and something honest comes out. And then third, be the person that you once needed. Think back to a time in your life when you were paddling and someone saw you. Or worse, a time when nobody did and you needed them to. Now go be that person for someone else. Take your wound and turn it into a radar for other people's wounds. The very thing that hurt you can be the thing that lets you find and help the hurting. Now, fourth and lastly, give the kindness away for free. Stop waiting for people to deserve it. Be kind to the person who was short with you. Be warm to the one who's cold. Tip generously, speak gently, encourage extravagantly, and do it whether or not they earn it. Because the ones who seem least deserving, they're usually the ones who are paddling the hardest. Kindness is not a reward you dispense. It's a gift you scatter. You are going to walk past dozens of people this week, hundreds maybe, and every single one of them is like a duck, gliding on the surface, paddling underneath, carrying a battle that you cannot fully see. And look, I'm gonna be honest, you can't fix all of it. You can't heal every wound or carry every burden. But here's what you can do. You can decide that the people who cross your path, they will leave your presence feeling a little more seen, a little more human, a little less alone in the water. You could be this reason that someone makes it through today, through the next day. Not because you did something dramatic, but because you were genuinely, unmistakably kind and compassionate to someone who the world had ignored and been cruel to. Because for one moment, they felt like they mattered. And here's the truth. The world doesn't become gentle because everyone deserves it. It becomes gentle because a few people decide to be kind, whether or not it's deserved. The way Jesus was kind and compassionate to you and me long before we had earned a thing. So be kind and compassionate. Not because the world deserves it, but because it desperately needs it. And remember, everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. So be the kind of person who fights for people instead of against them. Be so kind to someone that you make them forget, even for just a moment, how cruel the world has been to them. Because you never really know what someone is carrying. So let's carry a little bit for them. Keep the faith.
Push it to the limit, I can't go no more. Red light, no way, I'm coming back home. Long dirt road, all on my own. I'ma be the greatest, write my name in the stone. Write my name in the stone. Yeah, I'm coming back.